Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Engadget Podcast for the week of March 25th. My name is Tim Stevens. I'm the editor-in-chief of Engadget, and I'm joined by the two most handsome men in tech.
In this room.
Peter Rojas and Brian Heater.
It's been a long time since someone said that about me.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Between us, we're like one Dana Woolman.
Yeah, a lot of people asking for Dana to be on, so we'll do our best.
Yeah, we'll make do with what we got. How is everyone doing today?
Good. Busy day. It's one of those days when I got about half
busy
as
week.
much.
Yeah.
It picked up after last week, I think, being a little slow. So.
Yeah, we had the T-Mobile excitement. I was at the New York Auto Show. I still haven't written up half the stuff that I wanted to from that, so I got a busy night ahead of me.
I was in Boston last week, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The T-Mobile thing, we're probably going to start with the T-Mobile thing.
We should.
I don't know how many people actually expected that much stuff to come out of it.
I thought it would be kind of a bust since the details about the plans had mainly come out already. And we all knew they were going to announce an iPhone, so I thought beyond that, if there wouldn't be many fireworks. But I think with that new CEO, maybe we should have fixed it.
Yeah, and John Legere definitely had no shortage of profanity and vitriol and piss and vinegar and all that good stuff.
It's such a weird thing when the whole conceit of your press conference is that you should trust us. You know, the other guys are screwing you, and then you have. I don't know if you use car salesman. I feel like I might be being a little too generous if I call them something like that. But oh god, every minute of that just creeped me out. It was a creepy press conference.
The fact that they've been doing that exact same thing to customers for years, which they didn't mention. You know, they had this commercial with the four horsemen riding into town, and then one of them says, guys, I don't know about this anymore," ignoring the fact that he's been raping and pillaging with the rest of them for years and years in the past.
Well, pillaging, raping might be a little harsh.
Okay, perhaps. Yeah. But then he puts on a magenta hat, and suddenly he's cool.
Yeah. What I wanted was for him to have some boxing gloves up on the stage and just offer to fight anyone in the audience.
He wasn't far off.
What's
from
that movie director, that German movie director who made that horrible, and then he fought one of his
critics. He did all those terrible video game movies.
Postal. Uwe Boll.
Boll.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah.
Boll, yeah.
Right.
It's so great that he's fallen so far from our consciousness that we couldn't remember his name.
I don't know why he was ever in our consciousness at all, but
because he beat the stuffing out of one of his critics.
Because he hit a guy.
I think we've all wanted
do that
to
with
do.
commenters. Man, that's such a great idea. I never thought of that.
The next expand, Tim Stevens will box every commenter who shows up.
Watch out, people.
Here's another weird thing to me too. Is at one point I wasn't there, but I heard stories from Joseph mostly telling me about what the experience was like actually getting into the event. And when you take time out of your press conference to talk about the fact that we're not going to go over the top, we're not going to be crazy. Obviously, he was talking about Samsung. I mean, they mentioned Carnegie Hall, so there was no question about that.
Even though they weren't actually in Carnegie Hall, but that's okay.
I'm sorry. I keep
Radio City
Music Hall.
But he did say Carnegie Hall.
Oh, did he say Carnegie Hall?
He did. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so you were right in that he was wrong.
I mean, they practiced a lot.
They did.
So they could have gotten there. Okay. But yeah, when there's this criticism about how weird somebody else's press conference is, and just based on him alone, it was, definitely. And we've seen a lot of weird press conferences lately, but that was a top fiver for me.
It was also very strange walking into it. You felt like you were going to a theme park almost. So you go in this building, and they have you walk through a metal detector, not for a security standpoint, but the idea is that it goes off for everybody, and then it says denied for everybody. The idea being that you're being denied your freedom because carriers are lying to you. They also had screens playing the Portlandia sketch where they go in and they try to buy a smartphone to call the mayor, and they line up with this 20-minute long description of which plan do you want. So they had that looping. And then so you go inside this.
Do you think they cleared that with IFC?
I don't know. I was wondering about that as well. You go and you sit down in this room that was had panels on each wall, or projected screens anyhow, and it was just like being inside of Saw or some horrible horror movie, because it was all this rusted metal and all these sounds of people screaming. It was supposed to be the tortured souls of people who've signed up for contracts and want to get out of them, but they can't. Yeah. So we're sitting there for about 20 minutes listening to tortured screams, watching rusty gears turn and things like that. We were in hell, effectively.
So the kind of the overarching theme of this was, we're not going to confuse you. This is not a confusing plan like everybody else. But yet they went out of their way to do everything they could to confuse you.
Yeah, it didn't seem that. I mean, even I'm still trying to untangle some of the mechanics of the plans.
Yeah, so we should probably walk through the plans now just to get people up to speed.
Based on that Q&A at the end,
Yeah.
that they had to cut them off because there were too many questions
Right.
about specifics.
Right. About how does your simple plan work?
Yeah.
Well, it's this simple. I'm going to spend 20 minutes explaining it.
Wait, but I mean, if you were, I don't know. I'm thinking if I'm T-Mobile, I come out and to me the main conceit is it's cheaper. We're going to save you money. I mean that should be the big thing.
number one thing that they're going to say.
And they really other than saying what the price of the iPhone was going to be and a few other handsets, $99, they didn't really go out of their way to mention.
But even that, of course, has an asterisk. There are a lot of asterisks here. So let's start with smartphone pricing. So there's no contract anymore. There's no subsidized smartphone pricing. You're paying full price for these devices, more or less. $99 up front for their top tier devices, iPhone 5, the Z10, and the Galaxy S4, and a couple of others, which is good. But there's a $20 subsidy each month to go toward the ultimate cost of the device because it's not subsidized. It is a 0% interest loan over the next 24 months. Yeah. So rather than signing a contract up front and paying an ETF if you cancel early, you're signing up for a loan on the phone that you must pay off. You can't return the phone, by the way. You must pay the phone off, or you can sell it back to them as a used device and then pay the difference.
Can I pause for a second?
You may.
I'm not a lawyer. Nobody in this room is a lawyer, but isn't a loan technically a contract?
Yes.
I don't think they're saying that there's no contracts per se. I think it's that the difference between this and the other postpaid plans is that at least with in the traditional subsidy, once you've essentially paid off the device, you still pay the premium in your plan.
Right.
With T-Mobile, once you get past that period, you don't pay that premium anymore.
Right. Or if you're rolling up with your own device.
Yeah, or you can bring your own device. And I think that they are trying to be I think that on some level, they're maybe overestimating how much the average consumer cares about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the average consumer probably cares the most about what their monthly payment looks like, and how good the customer and the phone they can get and the customer service, and beyond that, I don't think anybody necessarily feels like the contracts are too confusing. Though I mean they are, but
right.
But when you have to go into that confusion to explain how straightforward yours is, that presents a problem when you're standing on stage trying to explain it to people.
Right. So then they have these simple choice plans, which are not that different from what they were offering before for their non-contract plans. Effectively, it's $50 a month for unlimited talk, text, and quote-unquote web. But you actually only have 500 megs of data. If you actually want unlimited data, you're looking at $20 a month extra.
And there's a caveat on top of that. If you want to tether your device.
If you want, right. There is no unlimited tethering, but you can add more for caps or buckets of data that you can then tether from your device.
So you can buy an unlimited plan for data with tethering on top of that, but the tethering itself is not unlimited.
The tethering will be measured separately from your unlimited data. And they were very cagey about what unlimited actually meant. They said basically if you're not doing something egregious, you will not be throttled or you don't have any issues, which is fair. I mean, it's difficult to kind of quantify that. If you have somebody sucking out 300 gigs of data a month, then they might need to be throttled.
But that's not that's not the answer that you want, and the answer you want also isn't if you do this in the middle of the night, we probably won't throttle you as well. I mean, people really want to know what they can and can't do with this.
And that was one thing they could not define for us. And there were probably 3 or 4 questions in the Q&A section, and they were pretty cagey about that.
I mean, it probably comes down to the fact that they're expecting there to be a pretty big jump in subscribers here, so they can't promise anybody anything at this point.
Yeah, that was the whole big thing. They said we've got plenty of network, we've got all this bandwidth. They said bring it on multiple occasions, and ultimately, if they they do grow to be as big as presumably they would like to, they may have some issues at some point.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is what are the mechanics of their relationships with the manufacturers now when they're buying these phones, because traditionally the customer for phones have really been the carriers. They buy in bulk, and then they sort of absorb some of that cost of buying the phone through the subsidy, but they also don't pay $650 for a phone. They buy in bulk and they pay some fraction of that, some percentage of that. So I wonder is there really a change in the mechanics of how much they're paying to buy those phones?
I think they're probably swallowing a lot more than they were before, and they're expecting to make that up on all the people that are going to come over, all the new subscribers and subscriber fees. But they're probably paying a much larger portion of hardware than they would have otherwise.
There's definitely something going on because they're selling. So this is a 0% interest loan. At the end of that loan, you get the phone, you own it, it's off, it's unlocked at that point too.
You can trade it up.
But you can pay all that in advance. And if you were to go in and buy an iPhone 5, the smallest one, and get it, to pay up front, your total cost would be $579, which is actually about $80 cheaper or $70 cheaper, excuse me, than if you were to walk into the Apple Store and buy the same phone. So it's interesting that, presumably they're expecting that you will do the installment plan effectively and you'll pay over the course of
for many years to get and to putting all the carrier stuff up front. Certainly in terms of, really getting people excited, I think they probably overestimated how excited people would be getting about these plans.
I think they tried to by preceding the information about the plans. I mean, that was all out there the weekend before, more or less. But ultimately, that was 90% of the discussion at the event itself.
It was the top. I mean, it was they waited until about 2/3 of the press conference to actually announce the iPhone.
Yeah, but I mean, they did better than Sprint did, which they basically got their logo up on a slide at an Apple event. So it's better than that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think if I'm T-Mobile, I think you come out of the gate and you say, hey, we've got all the top handsets for you. We've got the iPhone 4, we've got the S4, we've got pretty much every handset you can want on most of the operating systems here. That's the way to go. I mean, that's what gets people excited, and then you couple that with it's a $99 phone.
Yeah.
And now the question is the network, which has definitely been a shortcoming of T-Mobile. They launched 7 new LTE markets on that day: Baltimore, Maryland, Kansas City, Kansas, Houston, Texas, Las Vegas, Nevada, Phoenix, Arizona, San Jose, California, and Washington, D.C. Notably absent San Francisco and New York City, of course.
Los Angeles, Chicago.
Yeah, there were some others, too. They did flip it live for us on the day of the event, so LTE worked. We were able to do speed tests on that day, and it was reasonably quick. We saw between 20 and 40 megabits down and about 8 to 12 up, which you'd expect from a network having 30 people actively utilizing it. But yeah, it was a bit disappointing that they didn't go live in New York and San Francisco on that day as well.
Yeah, it's gonna take them a little while to build out that network, but I mean, they've been pretty good about having pretty decent speeds on HSPA plus.
Yeah.
So I think that the gap is not. I mean, obviously LTE is better, but I think that for a lot of people, it's good enough.
Yep.
Are they getting additional spectrum through this acquisition that supposedly is pretty much locked up?
Metro PCS acquisition.
Yep, absolutely. They're very excited about what they can do with the I forget the name of the spectrum that they'll be clearing up from Metro PCS, but the expectation is that they can definitely build out their LTE network much more.
And I mean, judging by that press conference, at least as far as they're concerned, it's all but a done deal at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, hopefully that'll go through pretty close to all of these new subscribers joining the network.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, are either of you thinking of switching to T-Mobile at this point?
I used T-Mobile actually for a long time.
Oh, you do?
I guess my history is I was Sprint until from 2001 to.
Then you saw your first Sidekick and you just had to.
No, there's the G1. I switched in 2000. What was that? 2007, 2008.
I think
2008, I think. And then and I stayed with T-Mobile for a long time, but I switched to Straight Talk maybe about a year ago or so. Mm-hmm. And that's actually worked really, really well for me. It's so cheap.
Yeah.
And, you don't get LTE, but again, it's not necessarily the end of the world. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure I would consider switching to T-Mobile right now, maybe when the network gets built out. Yeah. I haven't been under contract. I mean, I since my initial contract was Sprint in 2001, so I haven't been under contract for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is kind of weird.
Brian?
I'm on AOL, so
right.
AOL is my phone. I always have to defer that question.
For me, up in Albany, T-Mobile is pretty awful. Unfortunately, the connectivity at my house is like I can barely get data on T-Mobile, so that's not going to work. Whereas I have full bars of LTE and 30 megabits down on Verizon. So you got me, Verizon, for a little while longer.
If they light up Albany in the next round of
cities?
Hey,
if they flip on LTE in Albany and it works at my house. I mean, there's LTE from AT&T in Albany as well, but it doesn't work at my house. So I live outside of town, so in a secret bunker of which is
if you try to go to his house, attack bees.
He ain't kidding.
Nope.
2 ferocious dogs that don't like belly rubs at all. So
Dogs that when they bark, they shoot bees at you.
I was waiting for the Simpsons reference.
The robotic Richard Simmons.
Yeah.
All in all, a good, exciting event from them, and I think it does probably bode pretty well for the future of the carrier, who's been pretty distant.
Do we think that'll actually influence the market? I guess that's the bigger question. Are other carriers going to respond?
I mean, I think that
incredulous.
it's going to be interesting to see what Sprint does, because Sprint is really
the closest
the one
competitor.
and the one that's losing out the most right now, and the one that I think that they expected. It's funny like how Sprint expected their unlimited plans to be such a big selling point, and they really haven't turned out to be. Again, because I think for most consumers, they don't see running out of data every month as like this huge problem that they have. Again, it's price that they tend to care about the most, and selection of handsets. So with T-Mobile focusing on, we're going to reduce the confusion. Again, I mean, when I talk to regular people about their phone service, which I actually try to do a lot, they complain about the price. That's the number one thing to complain about, because AT&T and Verizon are very expensive. The other thing that they complain about is customer service, which is almost always terrible, no matter which carrier you're on.
They used to complain about handset selection a long time ago, but that's pretty even keeled.
Now all those people just buy iPhones.
Yeah, that's the only handset that matters to a lot of people. But they are going to get the Galaxy S4. They said they're anticipated being on March 1st, or something to that, or May 1st, excuse me, something to that effect. So still don't have a firm date there, but certainly going to be early May anyway. But yeah, they'll have the Galaxy S4, the Note 2, the Z10, presumably the Q10 as well, and a selection of iPhones as well,
and the HTC One.
HTC One as well.
What about what's the Windows Phone selection over there now?
That's a good question, actually. I don't know.
How big do you think the overlap in that Venn diagram is? T-Mobile users who desperately want a Windows Phone handset?
It's probably pretty limited right now.
Would be my guess.
They do have they've got the 8X. Actually, it's free on contract right now. So
I will say the 8X is an awesome phone.
Yep,
it's a really nice phone.
Okay, that one is it's free today, and you pay $18 per month for 24 months. So who'd like to do the math for me on that one?
Can a human even calculate
about
that?
$360, $380, I think, something like that. But they've got the A10 as well, so they've got a selection of phones available for Windows Phone aficionados.
Speaking of the S4, some news on that front from AT&T. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm going to defer to you on that.
$250 on contract, which is an interesting. They just kind of split the middle between the $199 crowd and the $299 crowd. April 16th.
Kind of going by I don't know. There seems to be a strategy over at Samsung at this point that's suggests that if you price something premium, then people will assume that it's a premium device, which is it's a pretty tricky gamble.
It is, but obviously their sales are backing that up, so it's working pretty well for them.
I'm guessing they're going to keep it at $249 to kind of squeeze the people that are really interested in it first, and then within a month or two it'll drop. I think that might be the word you meant to say. I don't think you really. I mean, look. I mean, I think that actually there should be a lot more elasticity around these things, because I find it frustrating when there are shortages of products, and I'm willing to pay more. And so I think that, I mean, whether you're Apple or whomever, there shouldn't be. I can understand the reluctance because sometimes it doesn't look that great, but charge more. Charge more for the first month and say, look, if we have a limited supply, if you really want it, you're going to pay a little bit of premium, and then the price will drop. If you care most about the price, you can wait.
Sure. I mean, if you pitch it like that, if you come out of the gate and say, hey, for the first month, it's going to be a little bit more, we're going to drop it down.
I'm saying you have to be transparent about it. But
and nobody's going to be transparent about that. No. Nobody's going to come out and say we're charging you more. And
I don't think anybody's going to do it.
No.
But I'm saying if markets were more rational, then people would do that.
Ironically, it's the marketeers who are the ones who are keeping us from doing such things.
But I have to wonder if a company like Samsung, who has so many factories in place, and they create so many of their own components, how much of that selling out, and how much of that limited run, a lot of that's got to be artificial, right?
It depends.
They've got to be they've got to be lowering quantity to drive up demand.
I don't know.
You don't think Samsung could just come out of the gate and have enough S4s for everybody?
I don't know that there'll be any issue with the Galaxy S4 selling out. I mean, I definitely.
But every major manufacturer has had, devices where like the Surface, for God's sakes, the Surface sold out.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of accusations.
Very few though
surrounding that on the
exactly
on the Z10 as well.
Yeah.
Where companies want to say, "Hey, we sold out," whether or not, well, not that they sold out, but they sold out. So I don't know that that's necessarily always a good thing. I don't know that's necessarily always, a truthful thing. I think there are definitely times when marketing has kind of massaged that message.
I mean, it's definitely a good thing for it's a nice thing for Microsoft to be able to say for the Surface.
Sure.
It's certainly in a device where nobody expects it to be doing very well.
Yeah. Yeah, and indeed it hasn't exactly been doing very well either. Yeah. HTC is, speaking of marketing, changing their slogan, quietly brilliant. Perhaps they want to be a little bit louder about their brilliance.
Yeah, they've been doing some, I don't want to call it guerrilla marketing because I feel like I'm giving them a little too much credit for it. But they've been going out there and made a show around the S4 event where hassling people in line and stuff.
Yeah, which they need to do. I mean, they need to raise the profile dramatically to really, pay for this great engineering and to.
Yeah, but they need to do it on a much larger scale than just bothering some people in line for this sport event. I don't know. I mean, I think they assume that would be a big kind of viral hit for them, because they just don't, for whatever reason, they just don't have the money in place right now. So if they can get the most bang for their buck, but clearly they're planning on launching something larger.
Yeah, what slogan should they use?
Annoyingly better.
I'm not sure that a slogan is going to matter to them. I mean, I'm not even. Does Samsung even have a slogan?
No, but
they've had inspired by nature.
We will crush you.
Yeah,
and things like that.
Yeah, no, but
I know they've had them, but
a slogan is less, I think, in this case, actually going to convert people and more just kind of signaling a shift.
Sure, but I mean, I'm saying it's not. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they're abandoning it because I think it was not the right tone for them. I think that the challenge for them is that, like I've said before, I think I said last week, awareness is really low about the One, and they have to figure out a cost-effective way for them to break through, and that's. I mean, it can be done. People do successfully market products with small budgets, and the thing they have in their favor is that the word of mouth about the One is pretty good. I mean, every tech blog seems to like it, and with good reason. I mean,
we certainly do.
It's a very good device.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all waiting for the local, the domestic carrier versions of the phone to be able to evaluate. I don't think that because the unlocked version that's been going around doesn't have LTE and any carrier customizations we may have to deal with.
Yeah,
which hopefully be minor. But they really have to be. They do have to be first and foremost very loud and trumpeting the fact that they have an amazing device. They have a very high quality device, and they have to be, shouting that from the hilltops in a way that they haven't been before.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I think a lot of what they've been trying to do around the S4 and since the One has come out has reeked of being a marketing campaign, and maybe that's the way to go, is to do something that doesn't outwardly appear like they're trying too hard to market this device. And if there's a way to make it look like the device can basically market itself.
Certainly, we've got a couple suggestions for new slogans here in chat. Victor Wu's got loudly brilliant or just brilliant.
I like just brilliant.
Just brilliant's good. Built to inspire from Trevor Samples, or we are better than you.
We are
modest, that one.
WABTY. I don't know. There's an acronym in there somewhere.
There is.
Wabbit. That's
like the one you want or something like that. That plays off the name.
Like you do that Devo song maybe. Mark Brothers will do that. Throw some cash his way.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think we're going to start to see the limits of their marketing budget. I mean, it's going to be difficult, and they have to spend a lot of money in a lot of different markets.
Yeah, they've got. I mean, we this is something we come around to a lot, but it's all getting it into people's hands. Actually having them out there in the world for people to see. I think when you encounter one of them up close, you realize that it's actually a really nice phone. But I don't know how to do that. Is that as simple as just paying a little extra money to get your device up there in Best Buy, so it's the first phone people see when they come in?
Well, I mean, I'm just not sure that's enough. I mean, getting people in the carrier stores to push the device is important, and Samsung's going to have an edge there. They're going to spend more money. I do think that one of the challenges that BlackBerry, the BlackBerry faces as well, is that smartphones are just not as exciting now. I mean, the One is a great device. We're still seeing the S4 is a great device. We're seeing great devices hit the market this year, but smartphones as a category is not as exciting. Fewer people are buying their first smartphone or discovering a smartphone for the first time and having that sort of wondrous moment.
I would add to that there's just not enough difference between the devices at this point, in terms of what you're getting.
That's true. I mean, at the high end, you're almost guaranteed a great experience no matter what you buy. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah. Is Alicia Keys going to help BlackBerry's case? I mean, a lot of people laughed at it.
From her iPhone.
Well, yeah, that could be a problem. But I mean, is how much value is there in having a product ambassador?
Having a brand image and a brand message, I do think it's important. But it's all about awareness right now for HTC. That they need to get awareness up, and then they can start to build this mystique around their company. Samsung's got this image now as kind of the kind of fun sort of poking fun at the other companies. They've got this kind of snappy, fun
all the
feeling
people
of their
in line
advertisements
at the Apple Store.
Yeah, and like Seth Rogen in their commercials and stuff like that. I think that's probably a good message for them. HTC, their devices are a little bit more serious, a little bit more high end, a little bit better designed. Maybe they need to go with like some abstract art and dancers and such.
Yeah, that's going to really appeal to the populace. Some modern art.
I was at the auto show this week, and they unveiled. I think it was BMW unveiled their B-class electric drive car. And they, sorry, not BMW, Mercedes, and they brought out a fleet.
Werner Herzog.
A fleet of, not Werner
That
Herzog,
would've
but
been
they brought out a
awesome.
fleet of dancers. There was about 20 people dancing for about 3-4 minutes, doing some lovely ballet before the car came out.
I mean, it seems
And now I need
like
to buy the car.
it seems like as of late they've been trying to take that Samsung approach. I mean, they've been doing these very sort of tongue-in-cheek attacks on the S4.
Right. Yeah, and I think that some of them have been backfiring a little bit too. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, I think ultimately it is a question of money, and Samsung is going to spend more. That they can afford to kind of try a variety of different marketing techniques and see what works, whereas HTC is going to be a lot more focused.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the interesting things is that when you're the underdog, you can kind of fight up in a way that you can't when you're on top. That it's sort of unseemly to be taking your time to fight with a smaller competitor.
Yeah.
So it's HTC goes after Samsung, goes after Apple. It's basically.
Well, I think that in a way,
point.
Samsung and Apple are both the top dogs now, and so you can go after both of them.
Yeah, but in their respective fields, I mean, obviously HTC has found more value in going after Samsung. I think they've sort of come to the realization that people are pretty much you're either in the Android or you're in the iOS camp at this point. And it's easier to pull people from Samsung than it is from Apple.
I think there's probably less affinity, brand affinity with Samsung than there is with Apple at this point, and that it is easier to get people to move within an ecosystem than to switch ecosystems. Yeah.
So no answers.
No answers. Some good news from BlackBerry. Well, reasonably good news from BlackBerry. They posted their first earnings and changing their name to BlackBerry, actually.
Is this their first earnings since changing their name to BlackBerry?
Yeah, it was only about, 2 months ago that they did that. So it was revenue was down slightly at $2.7 billion. But yet, despite that, they did turn a profit of $94 million versus about a $100 million loss the quarter before. So that means that Torsten's cost-cutting is paying off, cut thousands of jobs last year, really restructured the executive leadership, kicked a lot of people out, and brought a bunch of new people in. So apparently that's worked out, at least in the short term, for cost and profit.
It probably it wasn't people buying BlackBerry 7 devices, and it probably wasn't people buying BlackBerry 10 devices.
In fact, their overall user base fell from 79 million to 76 million. I think it fell 1 million the previous quarter, so it's actually accelerating. And it'll continue to accelerate, too, because we're talking about subscribers of BlackBerry services here. And ultimately, if you're a Z10, you're not a subscriber to the BlackBerry service necessarily, because you don't need that extra package on top of your data plan that you used to need back in the day. So obviously very early days for the Z10. We can't really look at this and any of these numbers and make any sort of extrapolations about the success of the company, the success of the phone, because it just shipped here in the U.S. about a week ago. But we can definitely say that the company is in better shape internally than it was before, I think, from a revenue standpoint.
Yeah, and we'll probably continue to get, it'll be a slow crawl, but I don't think it's, I think it's pretty clear that they're going to have a better year than they did last year.
Yeah, hopefully nobody was expecting a radical turnaround here in this.
Well, the company was colossally mismanaged for years.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And they were probably so much fat and redundancy in the organization that they could cut. And also, when you shift focus and you shift platforms, there are things that you don't need anymore. And so I think that I mean, they did lay off a lot of people and decide to allocate resources in different ways. So I think that it's clear that we're seeing some of the benefits of that. What will be interesting will be whether the fact that they turned a profit this quarter. I mean, sometimes you do see a blip like this, where you see the fruits of the restructuring, and sometimes the way that corporations can allocate costs and bake things, pass things out into the future, and it could be that we don't see another profitable quarter for a while.
I suspect what's going to happen is I suspect that they'll keep turning a profit. I mean, find that at least like fiscally the company is going to keep doing better, but the stock price very very well may actually drop, because odds are, it's going to be one of those things where they're not going to be doing as well as the market thought they would, or at least could do.
Trevor in chat makes an interesting point that he's seen more BlackBerry commercials than HTC commercials, which is true. I've definitely seen quite a few, especially on financial programs. BlackBerry seems to be really focusing on
HTC isn't not going to advertise right now because they don't have a phone in market yet.
That's a good point.
And so I know that one of the problems that they had last year is that, as you recall with the HTC, with the One X, not the Plus, but the original One X, when it was embargoed a little bit because of the patent dispute with Apple,
which is fun for all.
It took 2 more weeks for them to get into market, and HTC had already allocated advertising for those 2 weeks, and so ended up spending money when they couldn't drive purchase. And so they actually really not timing the advertising to coincide with the phone actually being able to, something you can walk into a store and buy is really important. So I think we'll see a lot more advertising when the phone hits.
So you don't think there's value in just kind of driving up excitement before it comes out? People need to immediately go out and pick it up.
Well, I mean, maybe a week before, but I mean, we're not a week out. We're still a few weeks away.
And is this BlackBerry thing? Is this recent? I mean, was this timed directly around the release of the Z10, or is this something that they've been building up to for a while? Because they didn't technically really have a device on the market either.
Yeah, I couldn't say, to be honest with you. I haven't been following their advertising.
I haven't been seeing any advertising for them, but I don't watch a lot.
You don't watch the CNBC a lot?
I was on Bloomberg this morning. I was watching. It was definitely, there were 2 or 3.
Well, yeah, and that's also, I mean, that's going to continue to be their market,
which is smart.
And I assume that it's probably a lot cheaper to buy something on Bloomberg or CNBC than it is on Fox or even like CNN.
Right. Yeah, and BlackBerry has the nice situation that they can actually do that sort of thing. They can target their advertising that way, whereas HTC needs to reach out in a much broader way.
I mean, I think it might be as simple as really doing a kind of straight ahead. I mean, I do agree with you that there's something to be said for being serious, in the sense that maybe it's as simple as showing these 2 devices, doing an ad where it's the S4 and the One.
Look how awesome this is.
Yeah, just going down the differences and going down the ways that your device is better. I mean, that it might just be kind of simple, stupid advertising.
But can they even do that? I mean, from a spec to spec standpoint, there's not really that much difference. It's got to be about the aesthetics, I think, at this point. And
so people walking down the street, or are you showing it to
I'm not sure
Pepsi tasting it?
I'm not sure for the average consumer that it's even something that they're looking at as an S4 versus One kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's the bulk of the sales of the phones are going to go to people that walk into the store with no idea about which device they're going to buy. It's not like they're saying, well, I was leaning towards the S4 and I'm going to go with the One. Mm-hmm. There are people like that, absolutely. But those people tend to be the people watching us talk right now. I think that the people that walk into the store, what happens is, and I see this all the time, I actually have friends that are not techie types, who actually call me from the store, and they're like, hey, this guy tried to talk me into buying like I'm like, don't, stop, put away your credit card, do not buy that phone.
Yeah.
So you think, I mean, how much of sales do you think comes down to point of sale of being in the store?
I'm not sure, because I do know from what I've heard, what I've seen is that online is growing a lot in terms of sales versus in store, but for really casual consumers, they are still relying on the salesperson in the store guiding them towards a purchase. They go in and say, I don't know what I want to do this, and those people sometimes have incentives which they don't disclose to sell certain handsets.
And the equivalent to that, and I don't know. I mean, this may or may not be the case, but obviously the equivalent to that is placement on carrier side as well. I mean, are people, your contract is up. A lot of times, they obviously, and this kind of goes back to a point they made at T-Mobile, which I think is probably pretty apt from everybody's carrier experience, that carriers don't really love you until it's time for your contract to come up.
Sure.
So, you get an email, it tells you you're entitled to these phones. You go to their site, and whatever has the best placement on the site is the first thing you see at the very least.
Yeah.
And this is one of the cases where I think there's still a lot of value in brick and mortar stores for people of being able. I mean, who wants to look at a picture on a website and buy the device that you're going to carry around for the next 2 years?
That would have been something interesting for them to talk up too. Would have been lack of commissions, lack of incentives for their sales folks. I mean, ultimately, there's a lot of, as you were mentioning, there's a lot of shady stuff that happens there. A lot of tchotchkes and a lot of spiffs that go on. I used to be in sales back in the day, so eliminating that, I think, would have been a nice message as well to make the buying experience, which is a big part of it,
no
better.
Commission. I think because Best Buy has a no commission, and people do tend to trust that a little bit more. It'd certainly be a nice way to go. Like we were saying, I mean, the challenge for HTC is they need to have people aware of the device before they walk into the store.
Right.
They need people to walk into the T-Mobile store, the AT&T store, the Sprint store, saying, I think this is the phone I want, or at least to be aware of it so that when somebody shows it to him, they're like, oh, I kind of know that one. Because there is so much awareness around the iPhone and so much trust in the average consumer in the iPhone, and it becomes self-reinforcing. The more popular it is, the more popular it gets, because people see it and they see all their friends with it, and they see other people using it.
It's the easy, safe choice.
And it's just like it's like that joke that nobody got fired, no CIO lost their job for going with Microsoft, right? It's like it's the same thing with consumers. There's a trust level with the iPhone, even though I personally think the iPhone 5 is kind of boring by comparison to the new Android flagship phones. I can certainly understand why my mom buys an iPhone.
Right, and it'd be the one that I would generally recommend to most of the members of my family.
I mean, it feels like a safe choice, but again, I think that without really spending money to drive that awareness, and HTC might have to look at this year as a year that, hey, maybe we don't make money this year. Maybe we spend all that money building this franchise in the way that Samsung did. Samsung spent a ton of money building the Galaxy S franchise.
Yeah, there's certainly some value in showing that you can continue to make a high quality phone, that this thing wasn't just sort of an anomaly of you putting all your eggs in one basket.
I think we've talked enough phones.
Sorry, yeah.
Should we talk GDC? I want to talk GDC.
This isn't I was told I was going to be on the mobile podcast this week. You're not Miriam?
I'm not swearing nearly enough to be Miriam. No, you should know that by now.
Or to be the CEO of T-Mobile.
Maybe I just need to swear more.
Yeah, I think so.
I should work on that. I never.
We've been talking about doing a blue podcast for a while.
Yes, Engadget After Hours, I think, is our name. So
I think it's Engadget After Hours.
Did
you bleep that out?
I hope so. I think Joe caught it.
We got a live bleep on that one.
First up, Sony was actually at GDC showing off some stuff. They had the DualShock 4 controller and the new Eye camera on display. Couldn't actually touch them, which is a bit unfortunate. So, but they were there. So we got more pictures and more closer with those. But we also learned some more factoids, I guess you could say, about the PlayStation 4. Its Blu-ray drive is 3 times faster than the PlayStation 3, which is good because it is incredibly slow. Also, let's see, the controller can be charged while the console is turned off, which is sadly an improvement over the state of things. The Eye apparently has some sort of an accelerometer or some sort of a position sensor within it, so if you have your camera pointed in the wrong direction, it will actually tell you that your camera is pointed in the wrong direction. A lot of other tweaks to the PlayStation Network. You can now have more than 100 friends, which is good. There are more security settings, and so you can hide your real name in there, which is
nothing's
something that they don't
making
have there.
me want to run out and pre-order.
No, like I said, little bits, little factoids, a little tiny nuggets of information.
GDC isn't the
ahead
show
of
where you launch.
It's not.
Right.
Very rarely there's a lot of really great consumer news comes out of GDC.
Yeah, GDC for a long time had zero consumer stuff at all. It was all, developer conferences talking about, optimal polygon rendering and shaders and such like that. But when E3 was struggling there about maybe 8 or 10 years ago, GDC really picked up as being this consumer destination, and so some companies started to launch things at GDC. So GDC now I think is sort of trending back toward a developer-focused conference as E3 is getting bigger, but it's still a fun show.
Still, obviously the controller is one of the biggest pieces of the console puzzle, so that's it's a pretty big thing for them to show.
Yeah, especially if you're talking about the PlayJam Game Stick, in which the controller is actually bigger than the console itself. This is another one of those Android Kickstarter success stories like the Ouya.
I think the name Game Stick is fine, but when you put those two words together, it's kind of unsettling. PlayJam Game Stick. It's like basically the console is a flash drive, more or less.
It is like a flash drive, yeah. And interestingly, it actually fits into the controller. It's so small, but basically, it's one of these little a thumb drive thing. You plug it into an HDMI port on your TV, and bada bing, you've got yourself a full-powered game controller that can connect wirelessly to your network, download games to it. You can I think you can extend the flash storage on it as well, and play yourself some Android games.
It's cool, but does that feel feels a little gimmicky? Like, look at what we can do with the size of this thing.
I guess
that's kind of the appeal, right?
Yeah. But if you look at the Ouya console, it's a tiny little circuit board inside of. It's still a admittedly tiny box, but ultimately it's mostly air in there.
I mean, there's a billion of these HDMI sticks which have Android on them.
Right. Yeah. This one just has a game marketplace and a controller.
Yeah.
To me at this point, they announced some partnerships. I know GameStop is kind of funding them in a big way, which it's says a lot about the device itself and about the future of GameStop, I think. But is the main thing that's setting this thing apart from Ouya form factor right now?
I think so. It's a little slightly cheaper than the Ouya 2, $79 versus $99, which isn't the end of the world. But the games in this console should be pretty cheap, so maybe we're talking a couple of game difference.
But I mean, that's another thing too, is we haven't heard a lot in the way of games. I think we got 2 preloaded games. I couldn't tell you what they were off the top of my head, but 2 of them are preloaded. And obviously, everybody's throwing their weight behind the Ouya at this point.
There's actually AAA titles that you can't remember. Shadow Gun being one, and Smash Cops.
Smash Cops.
By AAA titles, you mean the insurance company put them out?
Yes. Yes, actually, it's promoting safe driving and safe gunplay in Shadow Gun.
How obviously, both of these companies are going out of their way to have developers create games specifically for the platform, but I'm wondering how much crossover is there going to be between these things?
Yeah,
if you were developers and in your best interest to just create an Android game that works for both of these?
Yeah, we've already got this fragmented mobile gaming platform with iOS versus Android, and now we've got BlackBerry 10, Windows Phone as well. And now these individual markets are fragmenting that further. We've got the Ouya game system, which is going to be separate from Google Play, and now we've got this Game Stick market, which will be separate from the 2 of those. It sounds like developers will be able to deploy a title that could be, available through multiple platforms. But still, where do they push their marketing budget? Do they pay Google extra to bubble up to the top of Google Play? Do they pay Ouya extra to bubble up to the front there?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to is who is Ouya paying extra to get these exclusive titles for the platform, because that's really what they're going to need to set themselves apart.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody really likes the idea of exclusives. I mean, Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo have been doing this for years, paying millions of dollars to get early access or exclusive access to content. And
but
now
those consoles are much different from each other than these are. I mean, these are on the same operating system.
Right. Yeah, you could theoretically write a game that could be installed on any of these platforms and play well.
It's just going to come down to where the audience is.
Yeah.
And we all know, I mean, there can be a little bit of chicken and the egg. I think the thing that Ouya has in its favor is that we have enough people that pre-ordered them that it's going to have at least something of an installed base from day one.
Yeah, and really that's just because it kind of got out the gate about a month earlier.
Is that what it came down to?
I mean, they've also got what looks to be a somewhat more aesthetically pleasing design. They have Yves Bahar online too, which helps out for sure. And Julie got a bunch of people like Ed Fries, who's well known in the console game.
Yeah, and Julie is obviously pretty experienced as well.
Right.
Do we know anything about the executive team behind? Was it
PlayJam? No, PlayJam. Nothing.
Okay.
I don't.
And also, Roy Bahat, the chairman of Ouya, he ran IGN.
Oh right, I forgot about that.
He's a good friend of mine.
So I mean, they've definitely got a lot of power there. So I think that's helped as well. But getting first out of the gate, I think was a huge help for them too.
We also, I mean, the entire space is untested at this point, so we don't know if any of these things are actually going to be any
right. And
at all.
Today is the 28th, which means the first backer consoles should be shipping. Joe is very excited about that. I am too. Yeah. So we have 50% of the people in this room are Ouya backers. Joe is slightly more excited about it than I am, to be fair, but I'm pretty stoked too. So they'll be shipping out today. We still haven't heard confirmation of how they're shipped or when they should arrive, or whether all the backers are going to get them in one shot. Like is it overnight?
Trebuchet, catapult,
carrier pigeon. Could an unladen African swallow carry an Ouya? I think it probably could because they are fairly light.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to jamming my play stick. Is that what? Did I get that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. I think we got their marketing slogan right there, Brian. So that saves them all sorts of time.
Come jam our play stick.
Exactly. Yeah, the proof is in the pudding. And
how many more generalities?
We don't know which console, or which adage, or which idiom will be most appropriate for any of these devices.
Pudding is in the jam stick.
But we hope to be doing
mixes the pudding.
Reviews of the Ouya very soon, and the game Play Jam Stick, phallic reference. We don't know which will be better, but hopefully they'll all be amazing and they'll all blow our minds.
Yeah, I mean, if they both prove to have distinct enough libraries, is it?
Which I don't think they will.
But hypothetically, if they prove to have distinct enough libraries, what is it, $79.99? I think a lot of people can probably afford to own both.
Sure, it's certainly cheaper.
A lot of people have Xboxes and PlayStations.
Yeah, I was going to say certainly cheaper than any of the next generation consoles will be, including the Wii U, which is probably due for a price cut sometime this fall. Other nuggets of information from GDC. Palmer Luckey, the incredibly talented and youthful founder of Oculus, said, "Don't play drunk because you might puke."
That what? That's a totally that's a valid
feature, not a bug. Right?
Yeah. Oh, also they're puke proof too. I don't think that's actually true. No, that's a fair point. That's a fair point because we've been talking a while about how these things are potentially going to impact our perception, or at the very least, our equilibrium.
I'm going to read this quote because it's kind of funny. So, this is Palmer.
May or may not have been drunk.
It's funny. People, when they are intoxicated, don't enjoy Rift nearly as much. What happens is when you get severely intoxicated, you end up throwing up. One of the reasons for that is your body knows something's wrong. Your reaction time is slow. Things seem to blur. And if it gets bad enough, it says, wow, I'm screwed up. I need to get whatever it is out of my stomach that's causing this.
He's just describing being drunk, by the way.
The Rift doesn't do that much, but when you stick it on top of someone who's already being intoxicated, they tend not to enjoy it nearly as much.
Everything he said just described being drunk.
I wouldn't know.
Anyway, but probably not a good idea. Which is too bad because I feel like, playing video games drunk is one of the simple pleasures of life.
Sure. There's also the Mi PC, which is a little Android PC. Again, another one of these little kind of simple Android things you can plug into your TV. This one has the angle.
Another Kickstarter success story.
That it is. Yeah, this one has the angle that it is a kid-friendly device. So it's got lots of simple user interface choices and lots of parental controls, and you can create user accounts for your children. And maybe they can watch... I was going to say Barney. That's probably dating myself. What would a kid watch today? Peter, you would know best. No, you wouldn't because you're not.
I don't let my kid watch TV.
So.
Not Dora. What is Dora's? Diego.
Diego. Is Diego still hip? Is Dora too old for?
Adventure Time. That's a fun one.
Adventure. Yeah, that's good for kids and adults.
Yeah.
Archer also good for kids and adults. No.
Depends on the kid. I'm just gonna say it depends on the kid.
Okay.
My kid's more of a Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Oh man, this is how much Breaking Bad. Have you watched Breaking Bad?
I am completely caught up.
Okay, this is how much Breaking Bad.
No.
I
haven't seen
5 seasons in like 3 months.
You'll still get the reference if you've seen it all. And this is how much that show has messed with my mind. Speaking of screwing with your perception, I can't remember where we were. Oh, I was in Boston for a work thing over the weekend, and I saw a little girl, maybe 4 or 5, in a stroller. Eating blue rock candy, and all I could think about was pure methamphetamine.
Your mind has been corrupted.
You should have warned her parents.
Yeah.
Smacked it ever.
Stop that. No. I just saved her life.
Definitely don't go to a chicken restaurant. Are you So the TV thing is off the table, but what about the computing thing?
I mean, he's too young to use a computer, really. I mean, he'll sometimes, jump on my lap and try to type things like that and touch the computer screen.
Like a cat would.
Yeah. And we do let him use a little bit of iPad, but we try to limit the time and really to break it out like when we really need it. But otherwise, I mean, I think I mean, he's only 4, so I mean, I think at this age, like, putting in front of a television is not necessarily going to be particularly good use of his time. And
but I'm wondering, he's got work to do, that kid.
What?
You got to make videos, bake some cupcakes.
Yeah, no, I know.
Write some reviews for us. Apparently, that's next on the docket.
He's got a product database to run.
Yeah.
But when you do start, this is a weird way to phrase it, but when you do start thinking about computing for your child, are you going to look towards one of these kind of specialty devices?
I'm not sure that he would necessarily need one. Like, I think maybe when he's 8, I'll just get an old laptop and put Ubuntu on there, and
it's kind of like a VAX terminal. I think you should start at the base level.
You got to get him in early with Linux. I think that's important.
Yeah,
mainframes first.
Yeah.
Mainframes.
Yep.
Punch cards.
So there's also another event this week, which certain someone did not include on our podcast rundown. So I'm going to just throw it out there. The New York Auto Show is happening right now. Yeah.
I feel like there hasn't been a lot of coverage out of that yet.
Yeah, it's because I've been too busy doing other things.
Maybe that's why that's not on there.
Mercedes unveiled the B-Class electric drive, their next EV. B-Class is like their MPV, so like a Honda Fit kind of thing. It's
B-Class, you're kind of underselling yourself by calling it B-Class.
Well, they have the A-Class, B-Class, C-Class, C-Class, all the way up. They like letters versus numbers at Mercedes. This will be available early next year. Going to have a range of about 115 miles. They didn't say price yet, but it is a full-size, comfortable car with no loss of trunk space. So it will be a pretty nice car, and performance should be pretty good too. They also showed off finally the U.S. version of the Smart 4.2. That's the tiny little smart car you see driving around with 2 seats. That car was originally designed to be an electric car, but for whatever reason, it's only now becoming actually an electric one. It's been available in Europe since last fall, but it's coming to the U.S. $25,000. It'll be the cheapest EV on the market here in the U.S. And a range of 75 miles-ish, I think, is the EPA rating on the highway, in the city. And it'll be up to 100 miles if you drive cautiously. That'll be coming out in May in limited markets, and then about a month later throughout the world, throughout the U.S. So it'll be one of the few EVs that you can actually buy in any state in the U.S. as well, which is kind of a nice thing. What else? There was a Bentley with a nice infotainment system in the back. There's a new Subaru WRX today, which got me very excited, but sadly I wasn't there to see it. And
I got the email.
You saw that?
Yeah.
Brian is looking.
Is that official? That went out to the wire, right?
Yeah, this is the wire. Yeah.
What are we looking at?
That should be on the site.
Should I look at that? What's going on?
Amazon acquired Goodreads.
Ah.
Yeah. Engadget shared investors with them. True Ventures was an investor in both. And so I have met the founders a couple times. I hope they got a good payday. That site has a huge audience now.
I have some news, so that's cool. I got some news as well. Just got this in from Ouya. Early back units have begun shipping. They're going to slow down a little bit of the holiday. They're going to take 5 to 10 days to arrive, depending upon where you live, so that's interesting.
10 days?
Yeah, shipping to 110 companies.
If you live like 20 minutes outside
110
companies.
Shipments will be sent on a rolling basis over the coming weeks, and recipients will receive a notice with a tracking number once their shipment has shipped. So look for a tracking number, I guess, is the important thing. So if you haven't received a tracking number, you're probably not going to get your console by the weekend.
I mean, it depends on what company you live in, right, Peter?
Did I say company?
Yes. That was a great slip, though.
That was like kind of slipped the Supreme Court.
They're only going to ship it to 110 companies. And that's it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Are we out of stuff to talk about?
Do we have any questions?
No, I'm just shamed now.
Talk about Northeastern.
You've shamed me, and I don't know if I should continue. We got some questions. Want to take some questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
Any more HTC slogans?
No, but if you do have any other slogans, please throw them our way. Maybe we can email them to us, podcast@engadget.com.
I could say it in the voice that I read those Toyota ads for Expand.
Come on, can I get right now? I want to hear the Toyota pitch right now.
Right.
Come on.
Engadget Expand, brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places. There you go.
Never gets old, folks. That one's a free Toyota.
That's for you.
That one was for you, Toyota, for
More
free.
where that came from, Toyota.
Thank you, Toyota, for sponsoring Expand, by the way. And thank you, Brian, for giving us your super Uber radio voice.
Let's go places.
Let's go places. Kyle Hawley on Twitter asking, for the Z10, is it a relief to see a removable battery, or do you think it could spell trouble for poor real-life usage?
I encourage removable batteries as a rule.
Yeah, I think I like it. When
I don't think having a removable battery and good battery life are mutually exclusive. I think that it just depends on how much thickness in the device you're willing to put up with to have that larger battery.
Yeah, you're necessarily losing a couple of millimeters, or at least 1 millimeter, in having a removable back door versus something that's integrated. I mean, the Note 2, which I have seen right here, has amazing battery life, which is removable. So there's no
because it's huge.
It is, but there's no correlation between removable battery and bad battery life usage.
What's the battery life like on the Z10?
The Z10, I think, got about 8 hours on our battery rundown test, which is fair. So I didn't have any issues when I was doing the test. Of course, that was an early unit, not on US LTE. How exactly it performs in that regard, we'll start to find out now. But no, I don't think it necessarily is bad news for the Z10 that it has removed. I think it's good. I think it's something that companies can now use to distinguish themselves, actually, which is an interesting situation.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I think it's one of those things where it's for some people it's a really important thing, and for others it's just not a factor at all. Just like having a memory card slot. For some people, it's like a deal breaker. If a phone doesn't have one, they're not going to use it. They're not going to buy it. And for a lot of people, it's not as much of an issue anymore.
I mean, in the case of Apple's, isn't it just to make it more aesthetically pleasing to not have a removable back on it? Is that what it comes down to, or is it just so that you have to bring your phone in every time?
It is to make it thinner.
Yeah. If you don't have to make a battery pack that's strong enough to be removable, you can reduce the thickness of the wall of the batteries to make it thinner there, and have the you don't have to have this removable back door. It's now all integrated.
The one thing I do miss is when you have a removable battery, you can always reset your phone.
Yes, that's true.
And when you
very easily.
If you're someone who roots and does things like that, we've all been there.
Trevor in chat asking what we think of the new BioShock Infinity. I think that it's sitting shrink-wrapped in my office right now.
You think about it a lot.
I have thought about that.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking about the new Gears of War, which I did get a couple of hours into this past weekend, but not far at all. So I'm thinking I would like more time to play video games is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, me too.
That's what I'm thinking.
I basically get to play about one game every 18 months.
Yeah? What's your most recent one?
Skyrim.
That
says a lot, right?
Yep. That's cool.
You're about overdue at this point.
And then before that, it was Red Dead Redemption.
Which was amazing.
One of my favorite games of all time.
Oh, so good. So very good. Can't wait for the next one on some super duper next gen console. Yeah. You should see the individual hairs on the horse, I think, which would be super exciting.
You want to talk about that?
Oh yeah. We've got a prop here that we're going to talk about. I forgot about that.
I'm not even sure what to say about this.
I mean, what is there to say about that?
I was glad to discover this hand sanitizer, Angry Birds head, because I was wondering what this doll was a reference to. I had no idea and realized that, I mean, it's a little weird to have
a sheltered life.
a plush toy line to promote your hand sanitizer, but it totally makes sense. I get it now.
My hands are filthy every time I touch this thing. If only there was...
This thing absorbs germs and then this thing kills them.
So for those who don't have laser vision or who are listening later, Peter's holding a small bottle of Angry Birds themed hand sanitizer. What I'm wondering
is... Licensed.
Officially licensed. It
has a Rovio logo.
Distributed by Dr. Fresh.
Pretty awesome.
Why
did they choose the yellow bird, do you think, as the one? And not the red bird? Because the red bird is the iconic bird. Why would they go with the yellow bird?
I think maybe yellow is a little more soothing for a product.
I think there's probably also a red one. That's my best guess. Is there's probably several.
Yeah, there probably is. Yeah,
but it's got a yellow carabiner on it.
That's gold, Brian.
Now I got to look this up.
That's gold.
Well, it's probably as close as you can get to yellow on a carabiner.
Maybe. But yeah, it comes with a free carabiner.
There's a red. There's a green also.
There you go.
Nice.
Wow. I got to collect them all.
Throw them at pigs.
Please
go to the farm.
Please don't sue us, Nintendo.
Is that has to have happened already, right? Somebody, like some kid, goes to the petting zoo and just starts hucking.
There's actually more than one kind too. Yeah. I mean, there's not just the green and the red. There's also the green one has the pig on it.
I was saying I appreciate from Peter's twit pic. It looks like a IV drip, which I think is also kind of a good potential area for them to get into. Hospital supplies.
Well, actually, that's actually not being totally serious from it. That actually would not be a bad thing to have. Branded
for kids,
kid-friendly medical stuff.
Put some lemonade in there.
I don't know about that.
Wow, this is a real thing.
Tass in chat saying, Dr. Fresh, that sounds legit. Indeed, it does. Actually, that sounds like something from Breaking Bad, perhaps.
Yo, Dr. Fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
Your hands are dirty.
All right. Well, I think we've run out of topics, and unless somebody has any more hand sanitizer or branded products that we'd like to discuss, we're going to go ahead and call this podcast to a close. Thank you very much for listening to us. I hope you're enjoying the new audio quality. Please give us your feedback. Again, podcast@engadget.com. Questions, HTC slogans, suggestions for, I don't know, anything.
Hand sanitizers?
Yeah. Yeah, or if anybody wants to license our faces for your own line of hand sanitizers, I can tell you we are available.
Sanitary napkins.
And rather affordable, too. I don't know about that, Brian. I don't know about that
feel
at
like
all.
the market is
Thanks
wide
for
open
listening,
for
everybody.
Gadget
Hope you have a
blogger
lovely week. We'll be back next week with more from the
Patience.
Engadget Podcast.
Thanks.